The acidic winds of Tyros 7 screamed through the jagged cliffs, carrying with them the stench of sulfur and war. Shattered remains of Earth Alliance mechs dotted the battlefield, their twisted metal corpses half buried in the black sand. Sergeant Michael Carter wiped a smear of blood from his forehead, his gauntlet hand shaking from exhaustion. "Keep moving!" he barked, his voice hoarse but commanding. "We hold this line, or they walk over us to Earth." The remnants of his squad scrambled behind a crumbling rock formation, their boots slipping in the sludge-like mud. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, one narrowly missing a young private who let out a startled yelp. "Private Doran!" Mike snapped, grabbing the soldier's shoulder. "Eyes forward. Fear doesn't stop bullets. Focus does." "Yes, sir," Doran stammered, nodding quickly. Mike released him and peered over the edge of their makeshift cover. Across the battlefield, hulking Dravashan soldiers advanced with methodical precision. Their reptilian bodies were encased in gleaming exocets, each step shaking the ground beneath them. They fired with brutal efficiency, their weapons carving molten paths through the Earth Alliance's defenses. "They're pinning us down," Corporal Reyes muttered, crouched beside Mike. Her rifle's energy gauge blinked red. "We can't hold them much longer." "We don't need to hold them," Mike replied grimly. "We just need to buy enough time for the evac ships to get the civilians out." A deafening explosion rocked the ground, and a chunk of the rock formation disintegrated. Mike instinctively shielded his face as shards of debris rained down. "Commander Zoratha's forces have breached the eastern perimeter," crackled a voice over the comms. "Fallback is not an option." "Repeat, not an option." Mike's jaw tightened. "Reyes, take Doran and fall back to the second line. Cover our retreat." "What about you?" Reyes asked, frowning. "I'll slow them down," Mike said, hefting his rifle. "Sir, you're hurt." "That's an order, Reyes." Mike cut her off. His tone left no room for argument. Reyes hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." "Don't get yourself killed." "Wouldn't dream of it." As Reyes and Doran sprinted toward the fallback position, Mike turned his attention back to the advancing Dravashans. His mind raced, calculating the odds. They weren't good. His left arm hung limp from a plasma graze, and his ammo supply was dangerously low. Still, he wasn't about to give Zoratha's forces an easy victory. "Come on, you overgrown lizards," he muttered, steadying his aim. A burst of plasma fire erupted from his rifle, striking the lead Dravashan in the chest. The alien staggered, its armor hissing as it absorbed the impact. Mike adjusted his aim and fired again, this time hitting the exposed joint in its knee. The soldier collapsed with a guttural roar. "That's one," Mike murmured. But his small victory was short-lived. A barrage of return fire forced him to duck, his cover rapidly disintegrating under the onslaught. He glanced around, searching for a way out. His gaze fell on a supply crate half buried in the mud. If he could reach it, he might find something useful. Mike took a deep breath, then bolted from cover. Plasma bolts screamed past him, one grazing his thigh and sending a jolt of pain through his leg. He dove behind the crate, gritting his teeth against the agony. Inside the crate, he found a small cache of grenades and a portable EMP device. A grim smile tugged at his lips. "You're just full of surprises, aren't you?" He armed the EMP and hurled it toward the Dravashans. The device detonated with a sharp crack, sending out a wave of energy that short-circuited their exocets. Several soldiers stumbled and fell, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. But before Mike could capitalize on the chaos, a sharp, searing pain tore through his side. He cried out and dropped to one knee, clutching the wound. A Dravashan sniper had found its mark. "Damn it!" he hissed through clenched teeth. His vision blurred, and he could feel his strength ebbing. Heavy footsteps approached. Mike looked up to see a squad of Dravashan soldiers surrounding him, their weapons trained on his chest. One of them stepped forward, taller and more imposing than the rest. Its armor bore the insignia of a commander. "You fought well," the alien said, its voice a low growl. "For a human." Mike glared up at it, refusing to show fear. "Glad to know I made an impression." The commander's reptilian lips curled into a smirk. An impression? No. A nuisance, perhaps. Your kind is weak, Sergeant Carter. You fight for a galaxy that will never respect you. Mike chuckled, though the effort sent another wave of pain through his side. Funny. I was just thinking how much you lizards like to talk. You planning to fight me, or just bore me to death? The Dravashian growled, its amusement replaced by irritation. It raised its weapon, but before it could fire, a voice crackled in its calms. Bring him in. Alive. The commander hesitated, then lowered its weapon. You're lucky, human. For now. Two soldiers grabbed Mike and hauled him to his feet. He bit back a groan, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing his pain. As they dragged him toward their base, Mike's mind worked furiously. He scanned the terrain, memorizing every detail. He wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. In the distance, Reyes and Doran watched helplessly from the fallback position. They got him, Doran said, his voice trembling. What do we do now? Reyes clenched her fists. We hold the line. For him. Mike Carter awoke to the sharp scent of antiseptic and the dull hum of alien machinery. Pain radiated from his side, but it was numbed slightly by whatever they had pumped into him. He cracked one eye open, scanning his surroundings without moving his head. The room was sterile, lit by harsh green lights that flickered intermittently. A containment field shimmered at the edge of his vision, separating him from the rest of the room. Well, this isn't exactly Club Med, he muttered under his breath. From the far corner of the room, a voice rumbled. Our guest awakens. Mike turned his head, slow enough to mask the strain it caused. Commander Zorith Cray stood just outside the containment field, his imposing frame towering over the Dravashian soldiers flanking him. The commander's crimson armor gleamed, unscathed from the battle. Commander Cray, Mike said dryly. I'd say it's a pleasure, but I'm fresh out of lies. Zoritha's lip curled in a reptilian smirk. Your humor is quaint, human. Do you think it will save you? Hasn't failed me yet. Zorith stepped closer, his piercing yellow eyes locking onto Mike's. Your kind fascinates me. So fragile, yet so stubborn. Tell me, Carter, why do you fight for a galaxy that will never see you as equals? Mike met his gaze, unflinching. We fight because we believe in something bigger than ourselves. Something you'll never understand. Zorith chuckled, a low, guttural sound. Spare me your idealism. The Earth Alliance is nothing but an irritant. One we will soon crush. The commander turned to his soldiers. Ensure our guest remains comfortable. I have preparations to oversee. As Zorith strode out, the soldiers activated a panel, and the containment field dimmed slightly. One of them, a young Dravashian with a less than confident posture, lingered. Is this your first time guarding a prisoner? Mike asked, studying the alien's nervous movements. The young soldier's eyes darted to him. Silence. Mike smirked. Not much of a conversationalist, huh? Let me guess, Zoritha's big speech about humanity being inferior inspired you? The soldier said nothing but shifted uncomfortably. Mike filed that reaction away. Hours passed. Mike used the time to observe his cell. The containment field buzzed faintly at regular intervals, likely indicating a flaw in its energy distribution. The air vents were small but not impossible to exploit. His eyes fell on the panel the guards had used to adjust the field. It was within reach if he could create a distraction. He also noted the guards' rotation schedule. The young Dravashian returned more often than the others, a potential weakness. When the nervous guard came by again, Mike decided to test the waters. Hey, you got a name? The soldier hesitated. Why do you care? Mike leaned back casually. Just trying to pass the time. It's not like I'm going anywhere. The guard glared but eventually muttered. Torv. Torv, huh? Nice to meet you. I'm Mike. Torv scoffed. I know who you are. Mike grinned. Guess my reputation precedes me. He gestured at the control panel. So, how's a guy like you end up guarding prisoners instead of out there fighting? Torv stiffened. I do what I'm ordered to do. Fair enough. Orders are orders, Mike said, his tone understanding. But let me tell you something. Orders don't mean a damn thing if they get you killed for no reason. Believe me, I've been there. Torv's expression faltered. What are you talking about? Mike leaned forward slightly. You think Zorth cares about you? You're a pawn to him. Just like the rest of us. Only difference is I know it. Torv didn't reply, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Later that night, the base trembled slightly, a low rumble echoing through the corridors. It wasn't an attack, just the unstable crystalline generators that powered the facility. Mike had been paying close attention to those vibrations. They were consistent, occurring every 4 hours. He suspected the generators were nearing a critical point, and if he could exploit that, it might give him the opening he needed. The next time Torv came by, Mike struck up another conversation. So, what's with the shakes? Doesn't seem like the safest place to store your prisoners. It's none of your concern, Torv said, though his voice lacked conviction. Come on, Mike pressed. You're guarding me, not classified intel. What's the harm? Torv hesitated, then muttered. The generators are sensitive. They weren't designed for prolonged use in this environment. Sounds risky, Mike said, feigning casual interest. Torv didn't respond, but his unease was obvious. When the guards rotated again, Mike put his plan into action. Using a small piece of metal he pried from his cot, he manipulated the containment field's panel during one of its weaker intervals. Sparks flew as the energy faltered, and the field flickered. A loud alarm blared, and guards rushed in, including Torv. What happened? Torv demanded, his voice panicked. Faulty system, Mike said, holding up his hands. Guess those sensitive generators are causing more trouble than they're worth. Torv shot him a glare but didn't press further. The distraction had worked. Mike had noted how to disable the field entirely, but he needed more time to implement the final phase of his escape. Over the next day, Mike continued gathering information. He learned the guards' patrol routes, the locations of critical systems, and even managed to pocket a small tool from an inattentive technician. Finally, the opportunity came. Another tremor shook the base, this one stronger than before. The guards were distracted, their attention focused on stabilizing the generators. Mike used the stolen tool to short-circuit the containment field and slipped out of his cell. Moving quickly but silently, he navigated the corridors, avoiding patrols. He accessed the terminal using credentials he'd observed Torv input earlier, downloading a map of the facility. His goal was clear: disable the generators and create enough chaos to cover his escape. But as he crept toward the generator room, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Stop! Mike turned to see Torv, weapon raised. You don't have to do this, Torv, Mike said calmly. Walk away. No one has to get hurt. Torv hesitated, his hand trembling. If I let you go, Zorth will kill me. Mike stepped closer, his tone soft but firm. If you don't, Zorth will kill all of us. He doesn't care about you, Torv. But I can promise you this: help me, and I'll make sure you get out of here alive. Torv's eyes searched Mike's face for a long moment. Then, with a reluctant sigh, he lowered his weapon. What do you need me to do? Mike allowed himself a small smile. Let's blow this place to hell. The generator room was a cacophony of grinding machinery and flickering lights. Massive crystalline cores hummed ominously in their housing, their glow dimming and flaring sporadically. The air was thick with heat and the faint tang of burning ozone. Mike crouched behind a stack of crates, studying the room with sharp eyes. Torv stood beside him, visibly tense, his scales glistening with sweat. That's the main control panel, Torv whispered, nodding toward a console at the far end of the room. It regulates the flow to all systems, including the containment fields. Mike glanced at the guards patrolling the area. 4 heavily armed Dravashans, their attention split between their posts and the increasingly unstable generators. We take out that panel, and the whole base goes dark, Mike said, his voice low. But it's not enough. We need to overload the cores. Torv frowned. Overload them? Are you insane? That would destroy the entire facility. Exactly, Mike replied, his tone firm. It's the only way to stop Zorith. If we don't, he'll regroup and come after us, and Earth. Torv hesitated, his tail twitching nervously. I didn't sign up for this. You didn't sign up to die for Zorith either, Mike countered. But that's where this is headed if we don't act now. The young Dravashan's gaze dropped to the floor. After a moment, he nodded. Fine. What's the plan? The first step was a distraction. Mike handed Torv a stolen grenade, its pin already bent for quick detonation. Toss this near the eastern exit, Mike instructed. When it goes off, the guards will scatter. I'll take out the console and rig the cores to overload. Torv swallowed hard but took the grenade. And after that? After that, we run like hell. Torv moved swiftly, his movements precise despite his obvious nerves. He slipped into the shadows, making his way to the eastern exit. Mike watched from his position, heart pounding as he counted the seconds. The explosion came suddenly, a deafening boom that sent shockwaves through the room. The guards shouted in alarm, two of them rushing toward the blast site, while the others scrambled to assess the damage. Now or never, Mike muttered, darting from his hiding spot. He reached the control panel and began working quickly, using the stolen tool to disable the safeguards. Sparks flew as the console resisted his tampering, but Mike pressed on, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Come on, he murmured, sweat dripping down his temple. Finally, the screen blinked red, and an ominous warning tone echoed through the room. The core's energy levels began to spike, their glow intensifying. That's it! Mike shouted. He turned to see Torv running back toward him, pursued by one of the remaining guards. Mike raised his rifle, firing a precise shot that struck the guard in the leg. The Dravashan stumbled and fell, howling in pain. Nice shot, Torv panted as he reached Mike. Don't thank me yet, Mike replied. This place is about to blow. The two of them sprinted toward the nearest exit, weaving through the chaotic corridors. The base's alarms blared, and the floor vibrated violently as the generators edged closer to meltdown. They reached the hangar bay just as the first explosion rocked the facility. Shards of metal rained down from the ceiling, and flames licked at the walls. A handful of Dravashan soldiers were scrambling to board their ships, their discipline fractured by panic. There! Torv shouted, pointing to a sleek transport ship. The pair sprinted across the hangar, dodging falling debris and stray gunfire. A Dravashan soldier stepped into their path, raising his weapon, but Torv tackled him with surprising ferocity. Go! Torv yelled, wrestling the soldier to the ground. Mike hesitated for only a moment before nodding. He climbed aboard the transport, quickly familiarizing himself with the controls. Come on, Torv! He shouted, starting the engines. Torv delivered a final blow to the soldier, then scrambled onto the ship just as another explosion tore through the hangar. The force of the blast sent the transport skidding, but Mike managed to stabilize it, guiding the craft out of the bay and into the turbulent skies. The planet's surface below was a patchwork of jagged cliffs and molten rivers, illuminated by the fiery destruction of the Dravashan base. Mike piloted the transport with precision, weaving through the thick clouds of ash. Did we make it? Torv asked, slumping into the co-pilot's seat. Mike glanced at the sensor readings. Looks like it. The base is toast, and Zortha's not coming after us anytime soon. Torv exhaled shakily, his shoulders sagging in relief. I can't believe we pulled that off. Believe it, Mike said with a faint grin. You did good, Torv. Real good. Torv looked at him, his expression conflicted. I don't know what comes next. My people will brand me a traitor. Mike's grin faded, replaced by a look of understanding. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone. But you're not alone, Torv. Not anymore. The young Dravashan nodded, a spark of resolve lighting in his eyes. As the transport soared into the upper atmosphere, Mike activated the comms system. This is Sergeant Michael Carter of the Earth Alliance, he said. Requesting immediate evac for one wounded and one unexpected ally. A familiar voice crackled through the speakers. Carter? Damn, it's good to hear your voice. Sending coordinates now. Mike leaned back in his seat, exhaustion finally catching up with him. The weight of the past few days pressed heavily on his shoulders, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. He glanced at Torv, who was staring out the window, his expression unreadable. Hey, Mike said, nudging him lightly. Welcome to the winning team. Torv smirked faintly. Let's hope your team knows what to do with a lizard. Mike chuckled. Don't worry. We'll figure it out.